Scaphism, the ancient Persian torture method that killed victims with milk and honey. Of all the horrible ways you could have died in ancient times, this one is one of the worst. Learn about the torture method that killed victims with milk and honey. This is the case of the deranged mind, or minds, that came up with Scaphism, a torture method also known as the boats that originated in the Persian Empire. Around the 5th century BC, it was devised to inflict as much pain and discomfort as possible for as long as the victim remained alive, and it was reserved only for people guilty of the worst crimes, for instance, murder and treason. The method consisted of trapping the victim in the space between two small boats or two hollowed-out tree trunks and force-feeding them milk and honey over the course of a few days until the person died. In order for the method to work, it had to take place in a swamp or somewhere where the boats could lie exposed to the sun. The victim would be tied inside the space between the boats in a way that left their head, hands, and feet outside. Then, the person in charge of the process would feed the victim a mixture of milk and honey, forcing them to swallow against their will, so the mixture dripped everywhere, covering their eyes, face, and neck. This same mixture was then spread all over the exposed body parts, and the idea was that it would attract every insect, vermin, and wild animal in the area. Very soon afterwards, flies and rats, for instance, would show up and start attacking the victim, eating the mixture of milk and honey, but also eating the person alive along the process. Now, as if the bugs eating them alive weren't enough, there was also the severe diarrhea that left them feeling weak and dehydrated. This horrifying symptom was the intended consequence of their enforced milk and honey diet. The more they were fed this mixture, the more they would defecate inside the boats, but also, the longer they stayed alive. This point, precisely, was the cruelest yet most effective aspect of Scaphism. The victims couldn't die from the diarrhea-induced dehydration because they were fed milk and honey every day. As a result, the victims could survive for days and even weeks in a small hell of bugs, feces, milk, and honey. Finally, because the victim would have no choice but to empty their bowels inside the boats, the feces would accumulate and breed maggots and other vermin that slowly made their way into the victim's body and ate them up from the inside. This is what killed them. Ultimately, as was confirmed when the victim died, and the boats would be separated, revealing their half-eaten body.